Pakistan government recently banned TLP, Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, a religious and political group, clearly citing the reasons that they were creating a lot of interference in the central government as well as creating law and order issues across the Pakistan. Hey guys, my name is Muzammil Maqbool and I welcome you to another episode of 101 North. Today I have a special guest with me, Raza Rumi, who is a policy analyst as well as a journalist, who will discuss the blasphemy laws in Pakistan, Islamophobia, and what were the main reasons to ban TLP. Before we do that, let's watch this video.
को समझाना चाहता हूँ मेरी स्ट्रैटेजी क्या है। स्ट्रैटेजी ये है कि हम सारे मुसलमान मुल्क के जो हेड्स हैं, हम मिल के मगरब के फोरम्स में, यूरोपियन यूनियन में, यूनाइटेड नेशंस में, हम उनको ये बताएं कि क्यों हमें तकलीफ़ होती है जब ये आज़ादी राय, फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच के नाम पे ये जब नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की शान में गुस्ताखी करते हैं, क्योंकि उनको ये इस चीज़ की समझ नहीं है।
Thank you so much, Mr. Rumi, for joining us on 101 North. It is really an honor to have you on my show.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So, Mr. Rumi, I will start. I just wanted to cover the recent developments which happened in Pakistan in terms of blasphemy law and the TLP protest and the ban of the party itself. So, I just wanted to start with the first important question. To understand the blasphemy laws in Pakistan very better, we have to set the foundation for this entire conversation. What were the factors that sort of promoted General Ziaul Haq to promulgate the blasphemy law and to sort of add different clauses so that the scope was broadened?
Thank you, Zamil, for this very important question. But let me correct you. That the blasphemy laws in Pakistan, much like India, were actually promulgated by the British colonists in the early 20th century. So very much the text, the structure of these laws remains the same in both the countries and Bangladesh also, and wherever there were colonies of the British. By and large, this law was modeled after the blasphemy laws which were enacted in Europe, and they still perhaps exist in many parts of Europe, including Britain. But what General Ziaul Haq did was, as you rightly said, he revised them and broadened the scope of punishment and tightened, the sort of news around the mere allegation of blasphemy or insult to religion. And that's the problem that we have faced in recent decades. And later on also the other governments, also the first government of Nawaz Sharif made further legal amendments to the law. So what prompted General Zia? Well, this is a well-known story. General Ziaul Haq was a military dictator in search of legitimacy, in search of getting goodwill of the people, because dictators come without people's support and they want to seek public support and remain in office and exercise power. And Ziaul Haq took the most clever and cynical way of doing so by whipping up the religious sentiment. So he said that he was there to impose quote-unquote Sharia and quote-unquote impose an Islamic system on Pakistan and change its laws, and hence he should be supported. So a lot of right-wing clerics, conservatives, they joined his bandwagon, but while majority of Pakistanis were not in his favor, unfortunately, but he ruled with an iron grip. But also we need to understand that blasphemy is an issue which is an emotional issue for many Muslims in the subcontinent and worldwide. The respect and love and honor for Prophet, may peace be upon him, is very much ingrained in the daily education and narratives that we grow up with. So it's very easy to exploit that sentiment for political purposes.
Absolutely. And this brings up to my next important question. Whenever we talk about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad in all his lifetime did not send anyone to gallows, or there is nothing such so-called revenge in Islam, or it didn't happen from our Prophet, even to the hypocrites like Abdullah bin Ubay, Abu Sufyan, or his wife Hinda. So why do we sort of always come into revenge mode whenever we hear anything about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or on the article of faith.
So you see, the thing is that this is again a very important discussion that Muslims need to have, not just in Pakistan or India or Jammu and Kashmir, but globally,
Absolutely.
because if you look at Islamic history, if you look at how Islam evolved and what was the conduct of Prophet, peace be upon him, we don't see this kind of vengeful and call for violence in any of the instances we know. Like Muzammil, that when Prophet, peace be upon him, declared that he was the Prophet of Allah, there were many people in his own tribe, in his own family, in his own clan who opposed him,
Except,
who made fun of him,
absolutely.
ridiculed him. There were Arab poets who wrote long poems mocking him. But we don't have any hardcore evidence of Prophet seeking out
Mhm.
to avenge them once he acquired temporal power. And yes, there are some references which are often cited. There are one or two instances where Prophet's companions may have used strong language or had even used strong tactics, but we do not find any evidence of endorsement from the Prophet himself. You know, and this is the irony here. In fact, if you look at the Quranic verses that deal with naysayers or deniers of Islam, I remember one verse which says that if you hear people mocking you or mocking your faith, you do not pay attention to them, you ignore them, and if it's
Absolutely.
really hard for them, leave that place, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know where violence comes in. So violence comes in partly as a political instrument, partly as a means of asserting Muslim identity. And in our context, in Pakistan, in the post-colonial context, because you see these laws the original milder blasphemy law was actually put into the statute in 1860, but in 1927 the British tightened it because the idea was to quell Hindu-Muslim communal rights in colonial India. And the law that was tightened in 1927, kind of also added that any malicious act or any other word which insults the feeling of believers, should be punishable. And after independence, Pakistan did not see many cases of blasphemy law. I mean, there were a few, but maybe there were about 10 or so judgments by the courts, that have been documented. But it is only after Ziaul Haq that this got a spike, as you earlier mentioned. And the
Absolutely.
reason was that the religion was being mixed with politics. And
Uh-huh.
so what happens in a country like Pakistan, which is a Muslim majority country with just 5 or 6% of minorities or non-Muslims living, it also becomes a kind of a supremacist narrative. And within Muslims, Muzammil, that there's a lot of diversity. So in South Asian Islam, blasphemy has been an issue dear to the Barelvis and not so
Uh-huh.
much the Deobandis, right? Deobandis who were part of the Indian independence movement against the British and who later on changed their, kind of fashioned themselves as jihadists in more recent times. They seldom you find in their literature or in their speeches this issue. It's a very Barelvi issue. And what is happening in Pakistan is also there's a backlash against the Deobandi minorities' power, its hold over Pakistani policy, and its nexus with Pakistani state, that there's been a reaction by the Barelvi majority as well. And blasphemy is a cornerstone of that. The
Uh-huh.
third dimension that we need to understand has to do also with the rise in Islamophobia worldwide.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the Europe, the West, the United States, and I would say to some degree in India as well, where a lot of myths and false information about Muslims and Muslim faith is kind of circulated, especially on WhatsApp groups, that
especially on
Muslims,
WhatsApp. Yes.
yeah, or they're inherently violent, or they're out to get you, they're out to kill you. So blasphemy is also a kind of response, to that globalized environment. So, which does not justify violence. I'm not saying that, but we are trying to understand what's going on. So, the domestic and the regional and the international climate contributes to movements like TLP and their popularity in Pakistan.
Absolutely. Well, talking about TLP, if we will take the case of Charlie Hebdo or the recent artists from the Germany, uh, we sort of see Pakistan only has these harsh laws regarding blasphemy, whereas 52 odd countries, Muslim countries in OIC, are there. Is Pakistan, is Pakistan trying to be the vanguard of Islam, or sort of, vanguard of Islam, when it comes to these harsh?
That's the other problem, that Pakistan has always pitched itself as the leader of Ummah, the Muslim Committee of Nations, or Muslims globally. And that's the kind of narrative that has been sold in Pakistan politically and by the state. So, yes, that's a very, very important thing that you have mentioned. And I think partly that is one of the reasons that we have this kind of this self-identification as defender of Muslim rights globally, which also feeds into this narrative. So, for example, take the case of Indonesia. Yes, there have been protests there as well, but you don't see this kind of violence. I mean, take the case of Bangladesh, or even Indian Muslims. I'm not talking about J&K, Jammu and Kashmir, but mainland India. You don't see Indian Muslims arguing for this, right? You don't see.
There was a protest in Bangladesh, a very calm protest, and they gathered outside the mosque, and police allowed them to do the protest. And same happened in many parts of India as well. In Jammu and Kashmir, I didn't see any such protests, but in the past, these protests have happened. But it was in a very calm manner when it comes to Indonesia, Bangladesh, and as well as in India.
Yeah, or Malaysia for that matter, or Turkey. Turkey is also pitching itself as the one, but most importantly, the so-called defenders, of Muslim faith, the Saudis, Khadimainul Harbainul Sharifain, I don't know, long title the king has given himself as the protector of the holy mosques and holy sites of Islam. They don't do this. So the thing in Pakistan is that it is very much a political issue. And that is what it is, not an issue that relates to faith, but it's more to do with politics and how Pakistanis identify themselves, and that's a very important point of distinction.
Absolutely. And our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is Rahmatul lil Alameen. I say this all the time and without any doubt. He indeed is Prophet, peace be upon him, to everyone. But then parties like TLP sort of create a paradigm that they sort of love Prophet. They know how to love Prophet, and Prophet Muhammad is only Prophet, only Muhammad for Muslims only, and no one else. Why is that happening? What is the reason behind it?
So I think it's a misrepresentation of Islamic faith. It's a misrepresentation of what Muslims need to do, and that is a tragic part of our contemporary history and the moment that we are living through. Whether you talk about Charlie Hebdo cartoons, or you talk about the Danish cartoons, or the Dutch incident, or this madman in Florida wanting to burn the Quran, or you mentioned the German filmmaker. So the reaction to all of that is very much linked to the kind of Muslim anger and angst against the West, and partly we just cannot let off the West from its responsibility. You know that from 1980 to current day, this is almost 41 years, millions of Muslims have died in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, where the British and the American, arms are bombing them. You look at Libya, these were
Lebanon.
functional states destroyed by the United States for whatever, quote unquote, the war on terror. So, and the Western powers were, the Western European countries were allies, are and were allies of the US, and they participated in these wars. So now the US wants to get out of Afghanistan after 20 years, and we may ask this question: what was gained in those 20 years? The Taliban are still there. Okay, Al Qaeda was weakened and decimated, but Al Qaeda never belonged to that region. Al Qaeda, the mastermind of Al Qaeda was a Saudi, Saudi Yemeni, and they are the best friends of the US still. The Saudis are never questioned or asked by the United States, but in fact, it's Afghanistan or Iraq or others who bear the brunt. So there's this anger also. But again, should this anger turn into violence or acts of violence? I don't think so. I don't support that under any circumstances. I think my faith, logic, and humanistic understanding of the world disallows that. But having said that, we need to then understand that what is afflicting this global discourse, and that is where the issue of blasphemy, we have to locate it in that context.
I totally agree with you, sir. My last question to you: a lot of political parties, tried to amend the blasphemy law in Pakistan. Salman Taseer was a critic; he was killed. Shahbaz Bhatti was also killed. Senator Sharri Rahman tried to bring a private bill in the parliament in 2011, but that sort of entire scenario was stopped and it came under the pressure. Who and why it is getting stopped? This law is getting stopped. From this, who is stopping this law from getting amended?
So you see, that Pakistan experienced a return of democracy in 2008. Prior to that, there was another decade of military rule under General Musharraf. So when the new government took office in 2008, obviously there was opening of space, and Parliament's role became very paramount. There was a lot of legislation done, constitution was changed, and in that whole scenario, Sharri Rahman of the Pakistan People's Party tried to revise this law. But prior to that, Salman Taseer, who was governor of the Punjab province, the largest province of Pakistan, he was brutally killed by his own guard, who thought that Salman Taseer, by criticizing the blasphemy laws, was committing blasphemy. And then we had a minorities minister, Shahbaz Bhatti, who was a Christian, and he had also set up a parliamentary group, and he was also murdered in 2011, and then Sharri's bill was also sidelined at that time. So there are two things. One is, of course, that politicians are very afraid to take this step because of the backlash that they fear, but also this direct violence that has entered, in the last decade to a few decades, is what obviously makes them very uncertain. And then it's also politically very dangerous, because if one political party tries to amend that law, the other political party is going to say, oh, look, they're compromising on the honor of Prophet, peace be upon him, and therefore they are doing a disservice to Islam, or they should be voted out. So Nawaz Sharif faced that in 2017. Although he did not even revise the blasphemy laws, they just made minor amendments to the election forms, and that led to a sit-in by TLP in end of 2017. And obviously Pakistan's military was also supporting the TLP because they were pitted against Nawaz Sharif. So there's another dimension to it. But Imran Khan was fully making use of that moment, and he was saying, I'm TLP, I support their demands. Imran Khan's current Home Minister, Interior Minister, used that in his election campaign. Imran Khan also used that in his election campaign.
Manifesto as well.
Yeah, and so that's the other problem. Until the political parties join hands, develop a consensus inside and outside the parliament, we cannot expect any revisions, and that's the key here.
Absolutely, and I believe that it's time to stop playing with the emotions of the people, and there needs to be, awareness has to be done on the ground as soon as possible, and a lot of education will only bridge this gap. I thank you so much, Raza Rumi, for giving your time on 101 North. It was really an honor to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have a lovely time.
That's all from today's episode. Please like, share, subscribe our YouTube channel, and please post your comments below.